This is a project that will be where a product will be developed in Africa, it will be tested in Africa, it will be manufactured in Africa, it's going to be licensed in Africa, but for the world. That is what this project will bring to us.
Welcome to When Science Finds a Way, a podcast about the science changing the world. I'm Alisha Wainwright, and on this series, I'm talking to the global experts who are making a difference, as well as the people who have inspired and contributed to their work. Okay, so we've talked about vaccines on this show before and how they're a powerful measure for public health. But what happens when access to those vaccines is insecure, or when the supply is unreliable in the wake of outbreaks or pandemics? It's an issue that was brought to the forefront during COVID-19, when unequal access to vaccines made headlines across the world. And nowhere was this inequity more visible than the African continent. Currently, the African manufacturing industry supplies less than 1% of vaccines used there.
During COVID, African countries were waiting for vaccines. The Western or the developed countries had their second doses, and most African countries didn't even have a first dose.
That's Dr Delese Mimi Darko. She's the CEO of Ghana Food and Drugs Authority and currently chairs the steering committee of the World Health Organization's African Vaccine Regulatory Forum, or AVREF for short. And she's joining me today to talk about the movement across the African continent to build up vaccine manufacturing and improve access to vaccines. This is a movement that started before the COVID-19 pandemic, but has been spurred on by it. And to do this technology transfer, so to build the kind of capacity locally that already exists elsewhere, is a big task. But there's a lot of optimism here. Along with Mimi's perspective from the world of multilateral organizations, we're also going to hear from manufacturers and people working in the supply chain. With their insights, we'll get an idea of the progress that's being made and what the future might hold. Let's get into it. Dr. Mimi Darko, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alisha.
So, how big a task is it to build up a manufacturing sector from scratch?
Manufacturing is not cheap. First of all, you need a skilled workforce. And for a region that has not been manufacturing vaccines, has not been doing biotechnology products, this workforce is not available. And I know for some of the countries that are even starting up here, they're having to bring the workforce from abroad to train those here who are used to manufacturing, tablets and syrups, etc. So that is one thing. And then we have to ensure that even the research, because when you do a vaccine, even from that point, you have to test it. The skilled workforce available to do that is not there. So these are things that we have to build up. So all that it is huge, technology transfer, because Africa has relied on imported vaccines for so long. But it is not something that we cannot do.
Let's hear from one of the organizations working to build up that manufacturing capacity. Dr. Morena Makwana is the CEO of Biovac, based in Cape Town, South Africa. Biovac was founded in 2003 as a private-public partnership with the South African government. Biovac's goal is to develop and make its own vaccines, which is known as end-to-end manufacturing. Morena told us how they're doing it using a model called reverse integration and why they've chosen this approach.
I think it's important for listeners to appreciate that when you set up a vaccine manufacturing capability like we have on the continent, that, we have limited R&D capability. We have a very limited venture capital and environment. And therefore, under those circumstances, I think the question is, okay, how are you going to start a very complex manufacturing capability if you do not have the means? And that we realized very early on and said, we have a vision, but how do we realize that vision? Reverse integration is essentially going in the opposite direction of what typical companies do. Companies normally go from R&D to commercialization in that direction. We went from commercialization, which is selling, and we are going upstream towards R&D. That is what reverse integration needs. And so what we decided at the time is to rather import vaccines because the capital required for doing that was not as much as setting up vaccine manufacture. Importing and selling vaccines allows you to generate some revenue, but more importantly, it allows you to have networks because you have to source right now vaccine X, vaccine Y, vaccine Z from different manufacturers. And so you end up then having the networks and understanding the ecosystem as a pure importer and try to raise capital to do the next step in the process, doing some packaging and labeling. Now, you may say, okay, but packaging and labeling is simple, why is it a science? Well, it's part of the journey that we were embarking on because you have to pack and label, you have to have cold rooms, you need to know how to handle the vaccine. But what we needed to do that's quite important is that as you're building the facilities, what are you actually going to manufacture in those facilities? So we went to the partners that we had created a network with. We went to the same suppliers and tried to convince them that they should essentially bet on us. And can we manufacture one of their vaccines? Under their name, it will be sort of like a contract manufacturer. And now we were ready to do full finish, which is essentially just manufacturing for others. That's how the reverse integration steps were being undertaken and still are being undertaken today.
So, as we heard from Morena, Biovac's reverse integration model starts with importing someone else's vaccine and kind of works backwards, building capacity to do the preceding steps. So, it's a great method when you don't have the resources to go all in from the start. According to Morena, an important part of this process is working closely with governments.
Vaccines are largely purchased by governments. Vaccines are largely purchased by the likes of UN agencies, by these multilateral organizations. And so you have to work not only just in terms of a transactional relationship and say, okay, I'm just selling vaccines, but you have to understand what is it that from a disease burden that governments are trying to tackle. And we see those when it comes to, let's say, outbreaks and pandemics, because governments cannot do it themselves. They need the private sector to step in, whether in terms of products or in terms of assistance. And that's why we need to keep a very close relationship.
So Biovac started out as a public-private partnership with the South African government. What are the benefits of this kind of model in building up capacity?
As I said, it is a huge financial constraint for anybody to manufacture a vaccine. But then the biggest buyer in every country is the government. So if the government is involved in any way, the government is saying that, look, I have trust in what you are manufacturing. Having a partnership with government, even by itself, apart from co-financing, it is an agreement between the private sector and the public sector to say, once everything is in place, once the vaccine quality is assured, I agree to take these vaccines, off the manufacturer's hands. And that means that the manufacturer's investment does not go to waste. And that is what government should do. But, so government ensures that certain incentives are given to the manufacturer, whether it's tax waivers, whether it's regulatory support, whatever it is. It's very key in ensuring that the industry is sustained. So I think it's actually a good idea for that sort of partnership.
I know there's also been a movement to make it quicker for manufacturers to get their vaccines trialed and regulated across the African continent. That's through international organizations like the African Medicines Agency, or AMA, and the African Vaccines Regulatory Forum, or AVREF. And Mimi, you work at AVREF. Can you tell us more about why these kinds of organizations are being set up?
So AVREF is an initiative by WHO. And the idea of AVREF when it first started was to ensure that clinical trials could take place faster on the continent. So what was happening was you would have to go to different countries. Every different country would evaluate the trial. Next thing you know, it's taken 3 years and the trial has not started. So AVREF's main goal was to ensure that, say in a pandemic, if we wanted to use, try a vaccine that could be used for a pandemic, we can do it very quickly. So AVREF aligns regulatory requirements. So they have a guideline that runs across all the AVREF countries. So all the countries in Africa are evaluating trials by the same standards and using the same guidelines, which means that a trial can actually take place much faster. AVREF is also using what you call the joint review mechanism. So if there's a pandemic or there's an impending pandemic and we know that there's a vaccine available, we did it for monkeypox, all the countries come together. They are using the same guideline. The review is done in a sitting, and within 2 days, the review has been done. Various individuals can go back to their various countries and give approval to the vaccine. So in a matter of, for a pandemic, we say 10 days. For an emergency, we say 15 days. The vaccine is available and it can be done. So that was what AVREF was set up to do.
How does this make things easier for vaccine manufacturers?
Vaccines, when they are manufactured, still have to be evaluated. Yes. Mm-hmm. And so if a vaccine is being made in, say, South Africa, the vaccine is going to be exported to Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, wherever it is. Now, it's part of the review process is that the vaccine manufactured in South Africa, you can use that joint review mechanism to evaluate the vaccine for all the other countries that South Africa wants to supply the vaccines to in one sitting. That trial can take place faster because the harmonized guidelines still exist. So it doesn't matter whether it is being manufactured locally or in another country, in a developed country or a country that manufactures vaccines. That system still exists to do the joint review for the vaccine to make it available in that timely manner. There was an MOU that was signed between 7 countries, the regulatory authorities of 7 countries. And it is what you call a reliance MOU. And what it says is that if a vaccine is registered in any country, the other country would rely on the information and make that vaccine available in their country. It means that if Biovac manufactures a vaccine, the vaccine can be made available to us in Ghana because I trust South Africa's system that has evaluated the quality and the efficacy of the vaccine, that has inspected the plant, that has released the vaccine. I'm not going to ask Biovac to come and start the entire process with me in Ghana.
Right. Because it's essentially your system, right? They're using the system that you're. So if you're trusting them, you're trusting your own methodology.
Thank you. So right. within a short time, the vaccines are available. And we can now say that, we have licensed the vaccines for use in Ghana and therefore we will buy it. And this is, going from this little, NRA MOU that we've signed into the bigger picture of the Africa Medicines Agency.
So that MOU or Memorandum of Understanding sounds like a big step. Can you tell me a bit more about the African Medicines Agency or AMA? It kind of sounds like the FDA in the US. Will it be doing similar work? The agency is going to be doing the same function where it's going to look at a vaccine, say manufactured in South Africa, and evaluating this vaccine and making it available for the rest of the continent. And it is going to be much quicker because different countries don't have to do it at the same, at different times. And once it is done, as soon as any country needs it, they have access to it, and it's going to be faster. So countries are ready to support it on the continent and make sure that these vaccines can be used in our countries. Another important part of this issue is outreach. You can make the vaccines, get them to the communities, but ultimately you need the communities to come and get those inoculations. We spoke to Carla Toko from Village Reach, an organization that works throughout the African continent to improve the distribution networks of medicines and vaccines. Carla is the country director for the Democratic Republic of Congo. She told us about their outreach efforts in the capital city of Kinshasa, where vaccine uptake was low during the COVID-19 pandemic.
I would say that we started to be a bit more active on doing outreach vaccination really during the COVID-19 pandemic. With COVID, some people didn't like actually going to the health facilities to be vaccinated, or they thought the wait time was too long. We were able to, with initially one of the main health zone management teams in Kinshasa, to create high-volume vaccination sites. In doing so, we created also an environment where, people can just be also a bit more relaxed than in your usual setting in a health facility. But for us, what helped us as well is even working with community health workers to really help reach out, to provide those additional information that people did not have, and just really also able to really answer some of the concerns. And so that experience really helped us to see how, that we were able to even to contribute to about 30% of the vaccination of adults for COVID-19 vaccination in Kinshasa for the period in which those sites ran, so 2021 to 2022.
Well, Mimi, it's great to hear that those high-volume vaccination sites contributed to more people getting vaccinated. But this issue is complicated, isn't it? What are some of the main factors behind people deciding not to go out and get a vaccine?
What we realized during COVID was probably lack of information, apart from the normal logistics that would get someone, to a vaccination site. There was also the fear of whatever vaccine that they were going to take. So even if people could go, if all the logistics were provided, you get the vaccine right into the community where people just had to, go under, to the next facility and get them. Communication we found was very key. Now, in Ghana, what we did during COVID-19 was we, as regulators, we did a turnaround and started becoming communicators. The public trusted us to be the ones making these vaccines available. So the question was, if you're making these vaccines available, what do you know about them? Are they safe? Can you tell me that you are going to be sure that, if there's any problem, you will pick it up? So what we did from the beginning was that we communicated right from the beginning. So we said, every week we set up what we call a joint COVID-19 vaccine review committee, which was made up of experts from various fields of academia, healthcare, research, pediatricians. And we had this committee meeting every week. Now, after every week, we would communicate back into the community, and we did it through social media, through speaking to healthcare workers, through putting up things in the paper saying that, yes, we have registered these vaccines. So many doses have been given. These are the side effects that you would get with the vaccine. And it's actually very important to communicate that. So we realized that at the end of the day, vaccine uptake in Ghana was actually quite high because the communication kept on going. I mean, you can have everything that vaccine available, cold chain, fine, distribution, fine. But if there's no trust in whoever is making the vaccine available to them, then the hesitancy is there. And I think that's, for me, is actually also very key. And we worked with the healthcare workers. So we would do capacity, training on monitoring the safety, how to report back to us. So if anybody needed to know anything, they knew that the regulator was watching. They knew that the regulator was being responsive and communicating. So that is also an added feature that should be done. Communication builds trust, and
confidence too,
and confidence, yes.
People.
And for those who are putting the vaccines out there, those who are giving the vaccines, those who are manufacturing through the regulator, if we communicate properly, then the fear of the unknown is minimized.
I'm curious, does AVREF and its existence help give confidence to people? Because it's not just their own country, it's sort of a consortium of other countries that might help them feel more at ease because it's just a bigger group of countries deciding that something is acceptable.
If you look at, before we started working together, South Africa may think, well, I have a better system than Ghana, or Ghana may think I have a better system than South Africa. So there were fragmented evaluations going on. There were fragmented guidelines. There were fragmented pathways. Now, what AVREF does is that AVREF has put everybody together. AVREF says we're using one standard. Yes. And that standard is acceptable to everybody. So it's a standard that has been harmonized. So if it's coming to your country, it's the same standard. It is coming from another country, it's the same standard. That in itself also brings acceptability and brings confidence and trust.
Let's hear again from Morena. He told us previously about Biovac acting something like a contract manufacturer. But they also have bigger ambitions. Right now, they're working on an oral cholera vaccine, which will be the first end-to-end vaccine product for Biovac, which means they develop it and make it. Morena told us about this project and about the challenges that remain for building up vaccine manufacturing in South Africa.
Cholera vaccine opportunity came to us in 2022. This was through the International Vaccine Institute, IVI for short, that is based in South Korea. And at the time, there were a few players, but the market was not a healthy market. When the opportunity came to us from IVI, actually cholera had gotten worse as an outbreak, and the manufacturers were dwindling. And so we grabbed that opportunity and developed that product together with IVI. And so it fitted, it was in the sweet spot of our platform capability and knowledge. And we've been developing the products since 2022. If we have our own product as Biovac, and if I can just take our oral cholera vaccine, it can go to the West, it can go to Haiti, which is it's a much needed vaccine there. You can go to the East and go to Bangladesh, where it's also needed. The oral cholera vaccine project is going to tick a number of boxes. This is a project that will be where a product will be developed in Africa. It will be tested in Africa. It will be manufactured in Africa. It's going to be licensed in Africa, but for the world. That is what this project will bring to us.
It's really exciting to hear how Biovac is trying to make their own products. I've heard of the African Vaccine Manufacturing Accelerator. Could you tell us what this is and how it could help companies like Biovac?
They are looking at accelerating the manufacturing of vaccines on the continent. There's things like who's manufacturing vaccines? Where are they in their stages of manufacturing vaccines? How can we support them by linking them up with countries who have the technology, who are already manufacturing? How can we have a conversation to partner and collaborate with them so that these vaccines can be manufactured in these countries? How will we support technology transfer? All those conversations are going on to accelerate vaccine manufacture, because an individual country cannot do it by themselves. Even to get a technology transfer, it has to be a discussion. And this initiative is supporting countries that are manufacturing to get some of these technologies transferred and to support them to be able to do it.
That's really promising, because Morena explained to us that there are still various challenges Biovac is facing in its journey to build up capacity. Here he is again.
The vaccine industry in South Africa is looking much better than it was before. The challenges are still access to technology. The challenge is access to capital, which we are finding very difficult to raise capital. Skills will always be a challenge. South Africa is slightly better in that at least we have good universities from which we can recruit. But those skills it's not like they are sitting in abundant, because we also compete with the global north, where some of the skills are going from the likes of South Africa to Europe. So skills is certainly one of the sensitive topics that we still need to navigate towards. But yeah, we are in a slightly better state than we were a few years ago.
How can the region address some of the challenges Morena spoke about, like access to capital or access to skills?
Collaboration. The Africa Medicines Agency is one of the key things that it is planning on doing is to support local manufacture. That means that talking to development partners as one continent and getting the right funding, support, getting the right training, skills transfer, skills workforce, having a database even of skilled staff that can be used in the different countries. I think it will be like a one-stop shop to support local vaccine manufacturing, and it is done in a well-planned manner. I think the Africa Medicines Agency is well pleased to support this. I mean, we would be speaking with one voice. There's strength in numbers. If countries are manufacturing and they know that I manufacture a product, it is going to be available for the rest of the continent. that means that it is a business that will thrive. It is not just manufacturing for South Africa or manufacturing and waiting for somebody else to take it. But the continent as a whole is backing that manufacture in South Africa. And the continent is going to take the vaccines. And even, very soon Africa will be manufacturing for the West, because we would have the right systems in place backed by, strong regulatory support. I think as a continent, if we put our mind to it, as we are doing, we should be able to support local manufacturing on the continent.
And to finish off, let's look into the future. I saw one target calling for 60% of Africa's vaccine demand to be supplied by local manufacturing by 2040. It's a long ways away, but do you think we're on the right track?
I think we're on the right track. I actually do think, because we started with less than 1%. With the Vaccine Accelerator and with Africa Vaccine Manufacturing Initiative and Africa Medicines Agency, we are addressing in one basket all the challenges that would move us to 60%. We're now looking at a target in the next couple of years of close to about 23%. We're looking at how countries can ramp up to do manufacture, starting from fill finish and going down to R&D. Technology transfer. We're looking at that issue to see how we can have technology transferred. Reliance on imported vaccines will then be addressed. The skilled workforce is another thing that is preventing Africa being able to manufacture vaccines. We are looking at that. Financing is one of the key things. And we've talked about public private partnership, where governments, and private sector have to work together. And then if we go down to where we start developing our own vaccines, the R&D is being looked at, clinical trials being done, drug development being done. These are some of the constraints for vaccine manufacture in Africa. These are things that Africa did not have much capacity to do in the past. But now we've identified these and we're tackling them one by one. So we should get pretty close to 60% while we work on things like communication, trust, acceptability. I think we should be able to get to about 60% being supplied by local industry in 2040. I am hopeful.
Dr. Mimi Darko, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Alisha. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for watching this episode of When Science Finds a Way. Thanks also to my guest, Dr. Delese Mimi Darko, and Morena Makwana and Carla Toko for their contributions. This was such a big topic. Vaccines are such an important part of public health, and so their accessibility has to be a priority. And I feel like we took a tour through so many different aspects of it, from international agreements to startups like Biovac to the networks on the ground actually getting these vaccines to people. But as big and as complicated as the issue is, it also sounds like progress is being made. It takes time to build an industry from the ground up, and there are challenges that remain. But the impression I got from Mimi, Morena, and Carla is that this movement is ready to take on the challenges. When Science Finds a Way is brought to you by Wellcome, a charitable foundation that supports the global scientific community working to build a healthier future for everyone. Infectious disease is one of Wellcome's priorities, along with mental health, climate and health, and discovery research. If you visit their website, wellcome.org, that's welcome with 2 L's, you'll find a whole host of information about infectious disease, as well as full transcripts of our episodes. It's also where you'll find episodes about infectious disease from the first 2 seasons of the podcast. Or just scroll back through the series on your podcast app and you'll find it there too. If you've been enjoying When Science Finds a Way, be sure to rate and review us in your podcast app.